Okay, so today we're diving into something that I think a lot of people are curious about, and it seems like there's a ton of buzz online about it lately,
Yeah, for sure.
and that is electrolyte drinks.
Mm-hmm.
Those brightly colored beverages that seem to be everywhere you look these days,
Right.
and, they're promoted for all sorts of things like boosting your energy, first thing in the morning,
Right.
or helping you recover faster after a really tough workout.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are looking for that, that edge, that quick fix,
For sure.
and electrolyte drinks have really stepped into that space, haven't they?
Absolutely, and I know a lot of our patients at Upstream have been asking about them.
Yeah, me too.
So I think it's really important for us to take a deep dive and, look beyond all the marketing hype and get a clear picture of, what these drinks are actually doing in our bodies.
Yeah,
What are the real benefits, if any? And just as importantly, what are the potential downsides that people should be aware of?
right. Because there's definitely some things you want to be mindful of.
Exactly. So our goal today is to really give everyone the information they need to make informed choices about whether or not these drinks fit into their routine.
And how they can use them safely if they choose to.
Absolutely. And before we go any further, it's
That,
really important to emphasize that we're physical therapists.
yeah.
We're sharing information based on our expertise and the research that's out there.
Mm-hmm.
But this isn't meant to be taken as medical advice.
Right.
So if anyone is considering making significant changes to their diet or exercise routine, it's always best to chat with their doctor or a registered dietitian.
For sure. Always a good idea to get personalized advice.
Absolutely.
Okay, so with that out of the way, let's start with the basics.
Okay.
What exactly are we talking about when we say electrolytes?
So electrolytes, from a physiological standpoint, are essentially minerals
Okay.
that carry an electrical charge when they're dissolved in fluids like our blood.
Mm-hmm.
So think of them as kind of like the body's internal wiring system. They help conduct signals that keep everything functioning properly.
So they're really important for communication within the body.
Absolutely. And there are several key players here.
Right.
We talk about sodium, potassium, magnesium, among others.
Mm-hmm.
And these minerals are absolutely crucial for maintaining this delicate balance of fluids
Right.
inside and outside of our cells.
It's all about balance.
Yes, and this fluid regulation isn't just about, staying hydrated.
Right.
It impacts everything from how well our brains function
Mm-hmm.
to how effectively our muscles work and recover.
Yeah, it affects so many different systems.
It really does. So maintaining the right balance of these electrolytes is fundamental for overall health.
Absolutely, it's foundational.
And our bodies are constantly using and losing these electrolytes through various processes, like sweating, for example.
Right, especially when we're exercising or it's hot outside.
Exactly. And that's where electrolyte drinks kind of enter the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
They often promise a quick and easy way to restore those electrolyte levels.
Yeah, especially after physical activity.
Right.
So that's kind of the main selling point.
Okay, so let's explore those potential advantages a little bit more.
Okay.
What are some of the real benefits that electrolytes in general can offer, and particularly in the context of these drinks?
So I think the most prominent benefit is the role they play in hydration.
Okay.
As we mentioned, electrolytes like sodium and potassium are essential for helping your body hold on to fluids.
Mm-hmm.
They essentially influence how water moves across cell membranes.
Okay.
And some research has shown that consuming fluids with electrolytes can actually improve fluid retention
Oh, interesting.
compared to just drinking plain water alone
Okay.
in certain situations, like after you've been sweating a lot.
So, like, if I just finished, a really intense workout
Yeah.
and I am drenched in sweat, would an electrolyte drink help my body hold on to that fluid more effectively than just chugging water?
That's the idea, and some studies do support that. In cases where you're losing a lot of fluid and electrolytes through sweat, these drinks can aid in rehydration by helping to replace those minerals that you've lost.
And I imagine that would be particularly important for athletes or people who are, engaged in prolonged high-intensity physical activity.
Exactly. They're the ones who are really pushing their bodies to the limit and losing a lot of fluids and electrolytes in the process.
Right. Okay. So that makes sense in those circumstances. Now, as physical therapists, we know how crucial proper muscle function is.
Absolutely. It's the foundation of everything we do.
So how do electrolytes play into that?
Well, electrolytes are integral for both muscle contraction and relaxation.
Okay.
They help facilitate the nerve impulses that trigger muscle movement, and they're also involved in the process of muscles converting energy.
So without the right balance of electrolytes, our muscles wouldn't be able to function properly?
Exactly, and that's especially true during physical activity.
And could this help explain why some people experience fewer muscle cramps when they consume electrolyte drinks?
That's a good question, and it's definitely plausible.
Okay.
An imbalance in electrolytes can definitely contribute to muscle cramps and spasms,
Right.
especially those key electrolytes like sodium, potassium, magnesium. They all play a role in muscle physiology.
Hmm.
So by helping to maintain those stable electrolyte levels, these drinks might help reduce the likelihood of those cramps, particularly in the context of prolonged exercise where electrolyte depletion is more likely.
That makes sense. Now, we also know that nerve function is critical for everything our bodies do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every single movement, thought, feeling relies on our nerves working properly.
So how do electrolytes factor into that?
Well, electrolytes like calcium and sodium are essential for nerve impulse transmission.
Okay.
Those impulses are basically the communication network between your brain and the rest of your body.
Right, so they're kind of like the messengers.
Exactly. And these messengers rely on the movement of electrically charged ions, which are the electrolytes across nerve cell membranes.
So if our electrolyte levels are off, it could disrupt those signals.
Precisely significant electrolyte imbalances can interfere with normal nerve signaling, and that can show up in a lot of ways.
Oh, wow.
It can range from muscle weakness to more serious neurological issues if the imbalance is severe or prolonged.
That's a little scary.
It can be, but it's important to remember that most people don't experience these extreme imbalances.
Right, it's usually more extreme cases.
Exactly, but it highlights the importance of maintaining those electrolyte levels.
Absolutely. It sounds like electrolytes play a really interconnected role in so many key bodily functions,
They do.
all of which contribute to our overall physical performance and how well we recover after activity.
Right, and that's why electrolyte replacement, when appropriate, can be so helpful for recovery.
Okay.
It helps restore those minerals and fluids that you lose during exercise. And some research suggests this can lead to faster recovery and maybe even reduce the risk of problems associated with exercise.
So there are definitely situations where electrolyte drinks can be beneficial. But let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the other side of the coin.
Okay.
What are some of the potential downsides or drawbacks that people should be aware of?
Yeah, this is a really important area to consider because a lot of the commercially available electrolyte drinks out there,
Right, the ones you see in the grocery store.
exactly, they contain a lot of added sugars and artificial ingredients.
Okay.
And regular consumption of those things can have negative impacts on your health.
And what are some of those potential negative impacts?
Well, excessive sugar intake has been linked to a lot of different health problems.
Mm-hmm.
It can contribute to weight gain, increase your risk of type 2 diabetes,
Right.
and it can even have a negative effect on your hydration status in the long run.
Oh, wow. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive since we're talking about drinks, but sugar can actually dehydrate you.
So it's really important to pay attention to the sugar content when you're choosing an electrolyte drink.
Absolutely. And you also want to be mindful of artificial sweeteners and other additives that they might use.
Right, because some of those have raised concerns among health professionals, haven't they?
They have, and some individuals might even experience adverse reactions to certain ingredients.
So it's really not just about the electrolytes themselves,
Right.
but also everything else that's in these drinks.
Exactly. You have to look at the whole picture.
Okay, now let's talk about sodium for a minute.
Okay.
We know it's an important electrolyte, but can we get too much of it from these drinks?
Yes, absolutely. While sodium is crucial for fluid balance and nerve function, excessive intake, which we call hypernatremia, can be a problem,
Okay.
especially for people who aren't losing a lot of sodium through sweat.
So if I'm just sitting at my desk all day, I
Yeah.
probably don't need to be chugging electrolyte drinks.
Probably not. And on the other hand, there's also something called hyponatremia,
Okay.
which is low sodium levels,
Mm-hmm.
and that's less common with typical electrolyte drink consumption.
Okay.
But it can happen if you're drinking a lot of plain water without enough electrolyte replacement.
Oh, so it can go both ways.
It can, both high and low sodium levels can cause a range of symptoms.
And those symptoms can be pretty serious, can't they?
They can range from mild things like nausea and headache to more serious problems like confusion, seizures, and even coma in extreme cases.
So it's really important to find that balance.
It is. And it's worth noting that for most people in Western diets, sodium intake is already on the high side.
Right. We get a lot of sodium in processed foods and things like that.
Exactly.
Mm.
So unless you're engaging in prolonged, intense exercise in hot conditions, you're likely getting enough sodium through your diet already.
Okay.
So adding more through electrolyte drinks could put you into an unhealthy range.
So it's really about being mindful of your individual activity levels and dietary habits.
Exactly, and knowing what your body needs.
And I think it's super important to reiterate that these drinks shouldn't be viewed as a replacement for good old-fashioned water.
Absolutely. Water should always be your primary source of hydration. Electrolyte drinks can be useful in specific situations, but relying on them as your main source of fluids could lead to all sorts of problems.
Right, you could end up with too much sugar, too many artificial ingredients, or even imbalances in certain electrolytes.
Exactly. It's all about moderation and using them strategically.
So given all of these factors, when would you say it's most appropriate or beneficial for someone to actually consume an electrolyte drink?
Generally speaking, they can be most helpful during or shortly after prolonged, intense physical activity,
Okay.
especially in hot and humid environments where you're sweating a lot.
So like a marathon runner in the middle of a race.
Exactly. In those situations, you're losing both fluids and electrolytes. And a drink that helps replenish both can be really beneficial for recovery and preventing dehydration.
Makes sense.
They might also be useful in situations where there's significant fluid loss due to illness, like severe diarrhea or vomiting. But that's something to discuss with a healthcare provider.
Right. Always best to err on the side of caution.
Agreed. But for the average person going about their daily routine, a balanced diet should be enough to maintain healthy electrolyte levels.
Absolutely. And I think most people get enough electrolytes through their food.
They do a nutrient-dense diet that includes fruits, vegetables, whole grains that should provide adequate amounts of electrolyte.
Right. And staying properly hydrated with water throughout the day is also key.
Absolutely. It's the foundation of good health.
So electrolyte drinks should really be viewed as a targeted tool for specific circumstances.
Exactly, not an everyday beverage.
Okay, so now I want to bring this back to what we do as physical therapists within the Upstream family of clinical care.
Okay.
Because hydration and electrolyte levels are really important for our patients' overall well-being.
They are optimal physical performance, injury prevention, effective rehabilitation. They're all influenced by nutrition and hydration.
Mm-hmm.
And as we've discussed, those things directly impact electrolyte balance.
Right.
Even mild dehydration can impair muscle function, reduce your endurance, and increase your risk of injury.
So making sure our patients are properly hydrated and have adequate electrolyte levels is a big part of what we do.
It's a cornerstone of overall wellness.
And as physical therapists at Upstream, we take a really holistic approach to our patients.
We do. It's not just about addressing the specific injury or condition they come in with.
Right, we look at the whole person.
Exactly. We consider all the factors that contribute to their physical health and well-being, including lifestyle factors like hydration and nutrition.
So when someone comes to us for recovery from an injury or to manage a chronic condition or even to improve their athletic performance, we always talk about the importance of proper hydration and a balanced diet.
We do. It's part of their overall treatment plan.
So, for example, someone who's working with us on recovering from a muscle strain might also get guidance on how to properly hydrate and when electrolyte supplementation might be appropriate.
Absolutely. We look at their individual activity level,
Mm-hmm.
their specific needs, and their overall health profile.
Mm-hmm.
And we educate them on the signs of dehydration and offer practical advice on how to maintain that balance of fluids and electrolytes.
So we really connect the dots between hydration electrolyte balance and overall musculoskeletal health and performance.
We do, and we want our patients to understand how important those things are.
So to wrap up our deep dive into electrolyte drinks, what are the key takeaways you want our listeners to remember?
Electrolytes are essential minerals that play vital roles in hydration, muscle function, and nerve signaling.
Mm-hmm.
And while electrolyte drinks can be beneficial in specific situations, particularly during or after intense, prolonged exercise,
Right.
they're not a substitute for water and should be consumed with caution because of the potential for high sugar content and excessive intake of certain electrolytes like sodium.
Exactly. And for most of us, focusing on a well-balanced diet and staying properly hydrated with water throughout the day,
Yes,
that should be our primary way of maintaining healthy electrolyte levels.
absolutely. Those are the foundations of good health.
So as you go about your day, think about your own activity levels and hydration habits, and consider how a balanced approach to nutrition and hydration can support your overall health and physical performance.
It's all about making informed choices and listening to your body.
Exactly.
And remember, we're always here to help.
Absolutely. So if you have any questions or concerns, reach out to your physical therapist or another trusted healthcare provider.
We're always happy to guide you on your journey to better health and wellness.
All right, that's a wrap for today.
Thanks for having me.
It was great having you.
Until next time.
See you later.